Hello and welcome. Very exciting day today for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill Alliance. My name's Anna, I'm a campaigner of the bill, and with me I've got Alex, who is the coordinator of all the grassroots stuff for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. And we've got two firsts right now. So this is our first ever live stream, and also it's our first ever mass grassroots action. It's been so exciting so far, hasn't it, Alex? What have you made of it? You've been out with the banner, haven't you?
I have. I went to the Hackney banner, which is my local area, and it was so exciting. It was really exciting to see how many different organisations were on that banner. That was I hadn't been quite aware of that in my local area, so that was really cool to see. And then obviously on Twitter, it's just going off the charts. I think we're second trending at the moment, or third or second trending. So,
I keep seeing different things. So sometimes people go, well, hey, we're at the top. And then, but it's really, really working. The Twitter storm is working. So if you're watching now, get your thumbs going, keep tweeting, because, trending is good for us. Very good for us. Exactly. So how many groups, Alex, do you think have got involved in this thing today?
Well, we know we had a map. I don't know if people knew, but in advance, we had a map on our website, which is still there, which had, I think, about 65 people who'd sort of registered their banner, as it were, with the location. But I think there are probably quite a few more out there that people have done ad hoc or last minute, or so, you know, could be 100, 150, something like that.
Yeah.
And all over the UK and in like England, across England, Scotland, Wales, I think a couple in Northern Ireland.
Yeah. And what are people putting on their banners? What do they want their MPs to do?
Well, Anna, I'm glad you asked. We want them to back the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. I can't believe you had to ask that question. So we have 104 MPs already. We need quite a few more. Yeah, we're doing pretty well. We need some more, and so that's what we're asking today. Is if you're not signed up, where have you been? You've still got time. Get on board.
Okay, now I'm just going to try this out and work it because it's the first time. So, director, could we have the short Alan Scott video of a banner in action? Let's see if we can show what our grassroots people have been doing. Can that work? Maybe not. Maybe I've asked for that in the wrong way. I don't know. Right, Alex, let's talk about what the bill is all about.
Yeah. So maybe, Anna, you could take us through why do we need this bill now?
Well, Alex, the problem that we have is that successive governments have really found it virtually impossible to deal with climate change. We've been talking about climate change being in 30 years for 30 years now, and here we are, and it's actually happening. And yet still, despite making a lot of chat and talk, we're not really addressing the problem. We're not really grasping the nettle. So what the CEE bill is a legal emergency. Oh, is that video? No, to take the climate and ecological emergency out of the normal cycle of politics, to take it out of that, to make it a cross-party issue that we all have to address, to make it the most urgent thing that we do, because it is super urgent. You know, we are headed for a 4-degree world. We're going to go through 1.5 degrees, maybe by 2026, which is just not what we want to do. And so it takes it out of that political cycle. And then also the strategy for dealing with this has to address ecological problems as well as climate change, because the two are inextricably linked. So we have to look at our supply chains, we have to look at our footprint, and also we have to take responsibility for all of our consumption, not just the CO2 that's produced on the land of the UK, but the CO2 that's produced making our phones, making our PCs, all the goods that we import. So we have to count all of that. The bill says that. But the icing on the cake of the bill for me is that it also calls for a citizens' assembly. And that is what makes this bill so special, is because the citizens' assembly will ensure that whatever strategy and whatever we have to do is considered fairly from everybody's point of view. But you know a lot about citizens' assemblies, don't you, Alex? So how do they choose the people who go in the citizens' assembly?
Right, yeah, citizens' assembly. Basically, the idea is that it's people from all walks of life making these big decisions or feeding into these big decisions. So the way it's actually selected is randomly, a bit like jury service. But unlike jury service, what happens then is it's slightly more sophisticated. So what you second layer of selection, where so that the people in the room reflect the general population demographically. So, for instance, you would have roughly 50% women, for instance, 50% men, across age, ethnicity. You can even factor in attitudes towards the climate and ecological emergency. So what I mean is, if people feel less concerned about it in the general population, if people feel more concerned, those proportions are reflected in the room as well. So there's a criticism that sometimes people bring when we talk about citizens' assemblies is, oh, that sounds like it's going to be a bunch of environmentalists making decisions on behalf of everyone. Well, no, that's exactly what a citizens' assembly doesn't do. That's in the DNA of a citizens' assembly, that it's reflective of everybody. And that's really, really important, because we've seen, for instance, in France in the last couple of years, the yellow vest movement. So where a carbon tax, a hike in carbon tax was introduced without really getting the population on board, and that led to a great deal of unrest. And so that's not in anyone's interests, and that's the kind of thing that a citizens' assembly will avoid. I could go on about citizen assemblies for ages.
I think that's great, Alex. I think let's hold it there, and we might come back with some more questions. Now, I think we've got a video for you to watch. I'm not sure which one it is, but yes, let's play this video.
How is it that I can understand what the real danger of global warming is, and that the men in suits who should be taking care of us don't seem to have a clue? I wish I could explain, because really, it's kind of simple. Since men invented machines, the temperature on Earth has risen by almost 1 centigrade, and there's nothing we can do to cool it down, because you can't just cool down a planet. And you would think grown-ups would do something about that. But they're only building more and more machines that make more and more pollution. Even though all the professors and scientists say that in any case, the Earth will heat up by at least 0.5 degree more. The men in suits read the reports, but they don't seem to do much more. Everyone just seems to be waiting to see what will happen. But like with the tide coming up, you more or less know what will happen. So many people are going to have to flee, leave their homes. There's going to be misery, wars, not enough water or too much, and nature totally off balance. Well, the men in suits have read the reports, but somehow they still don't seem to understand. But running away from the problem won't solve anything. I guess what we should do is really spell it out for them.
We've just got to get the excitement going about the actual banner drop, I think.
Okay, and was there a video of that guy on the beach? That was a great one. Or was it just a photo? Did you see? There's a sort of naturist in St. Ives. He's like naked, but he's got the placard over.
Oh, when you're back.
Oh.
Welcome back to our live stream. Yes, we're still trending on Twitter. Keep tweeting, keep tweeting. This is the live stream of the CEE Bill Alliance banner drop. We've got banners being dropped up and down the country. So that video we just played you is from the Big Earth. Now that video is from 2008. And that video was really part of a campaign that inspired us to do the CEE Bill campaign. So that campaign, The Big Ask, was started in 2004 by Friends of the Earth. And then it gained loads and loads of supporters from NGOs, businesses, individuals, Tom York, and ultimately it gained more and more supporters in Parliament. Now, what's very interesting about the Climate Change Act was it started life as a private member's bill, but then the then opposition, which was the Conservative Party, took it on and made it a bill of their own. And when it was finally voted for in 2008, there were only 4 MPs in the entire Parliament that voted against it, which means that many of those Conservative MPs who are in government now voted for the Climate Change Act. Now, the only thing about the Climate Change Act is that we're not really hitting our targets, are we, Alex? So this is part of the reason why we need a new campaign for the legal framework that the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill provides. So, Alex, how many people do you think we've got signing up to the bill, and how can they get involved?
So currently, I think we've got about 9,500 people who've signed up as individual supporters, campaigners on our website. So that means basically on our homepage, at the top of our homepage, you can join the campaign as an individual. And if you haven't done that yet and you're watching this, it's great. If you've just heard about the campaign, it's great. If you've been working on the campaign for ages, it's also really good so that we know you're there. One thing about that is really useful if you're comfortable doing this, if you can put your postcode as well, because then we know who we have in what constituencies, and we can join people up at local level. So if you are comfortable doing that, that's really great. It's just literally to kind of have more an idea of where the campaign is and where people are. And that's something that we're going to be doing much more in the next phase. Building off this banner drop is really building on those local alliances. Yeah, so exactly. So we've got about 9,500 people. You can also sign up as a organisation. So you may have seen on the website, there's a tab that says MPs and supporters. If you look at that, you can see a lot of allied organisations who've signed up to join us. Some big names in there like Greenpeace and Oxfam. But yeah, if you're a member of an organisation who hasn't joined yet, you can push for your organisation to join as well, and that's really, really important too. But yeah, I was gonna say as well, building off what you said, Anna, about the Big Ask campaign, is we weren't just inspired by it. We also have people in our team who worked on that as well. So we've basically copied part of that strategy, and we're hoping that we've started as a private members bill. But we're going to build and then eventually see this passed into law.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got this amazing guy called Ron Bailey working with us, and he is very skilled in the art of tabling the private members bill and working with people to make those happen. I think he's now done about 8 or 10 that have actually become law. So he is quite a legend, is Ron Bailey. And the interesting fact about Ron is he is the only individual who has had an early day motion in his name. And an early day motion, for those who don't know, and I was one of those who didn't know before I started working on this campaign, is a way that you force a debate through on a private members bill. So anyway, Director, please can we cut to, we've got a video from Ilkley, is that right? And somebody who's sent in a video of their banner. Are we able to show that now?
Hi, I'm Kath Stewart and I'm a member of Climate Action Ilkley, and I'm backing the CEE bill, and I would urge everyone in Ilkley to back the CEE bill, and particularly our MP Robbie Moore, who currently says that the CEE bill is not necessary because the government are doing everything they need to hit their targets. This is absolutely not true, and we need to take urgent action now. Back the CEE bill.
Okay, so coming back to that's Ilkley group. We've got loads of groups. Look on the Twitter. There are loads and loads of pictures. People have made amazing banners, haven't they, Alex? And the hashtag is hashtag CEE Bill. So keep tweeting and keep looking. So Alex, you wanted to talk a little bit more about private members bills.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because this is obviously something that we're, a lot of us on the campaign are learning more and more about, and that people kind of need more clarity around. So one thing that sometimes we hear back from MPs is they say that they can't support this because it's a private members bill, which there may be sort of party political reasons why people might not want to support it, but there's no rule against it at all. So so basically, if you can say that to your MP, you've got the useful thing here is just to stick on the substance. Like, do you agree with the substance of this bill, right? Just to keep bringing it back to that. Like, do you agree that we should be taking the things that Anna was mentioning earlier? Should we take responsibility for all of our emissions? Should we be tackling the climate and nature emergency in a combined way? If the answer is yes, you're behind this bill. That's it. That's the end of the story. We don't want to hear about procedure. So so that's the thing about private members bill. Another thing we hear is that it's not politically realistic. So obviously, as we've already mentioned, the Big Ask campaign did start life as a private members bill. Private members bill do get passed. Who can make that happen? MPs. So it's sort of a bit of a circular argument to say I can't support this because it won't happen. Well, you're the one that can make it happen. So let's get this going.
Absolutely. I think what you will find if your MP is a member of the Labour front bench, my MP, Emily Thornberry, is, that they will say something along the lines of it's a presentation bill and we can't support presentation bill because we're on the front bench, but they can actually support it if they want to. And it's interesting what can be done when you do want to do things. But anyway, I think we should cut to the next video, which I think we should have the video with that shows all the faces of the 100 MPs that already support the bill. Let's celebrate them. And then there's a 2 minutes from Charlie Gardner on why the bill is so important. Can we go to that, director, please?
100 MPs from across 8 different political parties now support the CEE Bill. Why is this bill so important?
I'm one of the scientists to help write the bill. And this is what it's about. Part 1 is about reducing our emissions to keep planetary heating down to 1.5 degrees. This will minimise extreme storms, wildfires, floods, and all the rest of it. Part 2 is about conserving and restoring ecosystems and soils, protecting wildlife and the places we love, and absorbing lots and lots of carbon into woodlands and vegetation. Both make it clear that if products we import cause emissions in China or deforestation in the Amazon, we'll treat that as our problem and not someone else's. Part 3 is about how we make the decisions we need. The bill calls for a citizens' assembly to help government and parliament create the strategy to make it happen. People-backed, bold decisions, avoiding party political infighting, where people have a real say in choosing a fair path to a zero-carbon society and a thriving natural world. Get your MP to support the bill. Our futures depend on it.
So welcome back to the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill live stream. We're live streaming on Friday, the 26th of March. Oh, something we haven't said, Alex, is why we did this action today, because this was going to be the date of the second reading, wasn't it? There's quite a lot of parliamentary procedure that you have to learn on a bill like this. I found it quite confusing, but you're pretty good on this stuff. Do you want to explain a bit about the second reading thing?
Yes, I can do. Before I forget, can I say to remind people to keep tweeting? We want to, this is basically, the storm is happening right now, and you can contribute to it by tweeting, retweeting, looking for that hashtag CEE Bill, liking. I just went through and liked about 100 posts just before we came online. Feels quite good. But yeah, to get back to your question, Anna, so basically what's happened is this. The private members bill was tabled in September by Caroline Lucas. We were given the date of a second reading of the 12th of March. That was put back to the 26th of March, today. Then, due to COVID, Friday sittings, so that's basically parliamentary business on Fridays was cancelled due to COVID, and that's when these private members' bills get considered on these Fridays. So that for the foreseeable future, to the end of this Parliament, it looks pretty unlikely that we're going to get this second reading. There's a bit more to it than that, in the sense that these second readings, in a way, are always a bit of a damp squib. So this is the thing with private members' bills, is you're kind of on the books in Parliament, and you're just looking for every opportunity to get debates. So there's all different kinds of debates. There's Westminster Hall debates, there's a German debates. These are all things that I've been learning about too. And so it's just about raising that profile in Parliament. So the logic of the campaign, I realise I've thrown some different sort of terminology around, but the logic of the campaign, if there's one thing that stays with you from this, is we stay on the books in Parliament. So when we get to the new parliamentary session in May, or I think June, starts in May, and then by June, we're going to reintroduce the bill in one form or another. Okay, so we're not ending the campaign. So even though we didn't get this second reading, the campaign goes on. That is not a problem. We have 104 MPs, we didn't have that many when we tabled it the first time. So we will not have a problem retabling it. And the logic is we just stay on the books in Parliament. We keep our foot in the door. We build the campaign outside of Parliament. We build this groundswell, and eventually, there's not really any option but to really start to take on board properly what we're saying and put it into law.
Okay, yes. And also it's interesting, isn't it? Some bills seem to be quicker than others. So people say to us sometimes, oh, it's impossible to get a private member's bill through. But actually, I think the Brexit bill in December has shown us you can do it in a week if you really want to. It was also quite interesting how quickly the police bill went from being published to second reading. And what's really fascinating, though, is how long it's taking the environment bill to get through. I mean, that started life in 2018, and it had its second reading, and it was due to be voted on with its few amendments only, a month ago, but it's been postponed yet again. So I think it just depends what the priorities are as to how fast your bill can go through. And I think what we're asking the government is to make the climate and ecological emergency the number one priority, and to take it out of these political cycle and the political games and make it a cross-party issue that the entire nation considers together. Now, Director, I think we've got a video lined up this was Caroline Lucas speaking at one of our Business Declares events, and she was recommending how to lobby your MP, how to go about it. And so we're just going to play this video, because if your MP isn't one of those 104 MPs, then we need you to keep lobbying your MP and keep writing to them so that they can see how important this is to so many people. And what we want to do is build up a big grassroots movement where everybody writes to their MP. So, Director, if we could cut to Caroline recommending how to lobby your MP, that would be great. Thank you.
I suppose my first message would be, don't give up. I mean, MPs are, past masters and mistresses at sending the fobbing off letter. So don't be fobbed off. Keep coming back. If you're contacting them by email, do remember to put your postal address, because nothing concentrates MPs' minds more than remembering that the person contacting them is their constituent and therefore has a role in whether or not they get re-elected. Whereas in email, sometimes it's very easy not to remember to put your postal address, so they don't know if you're actually a constituent, and therefore they don't know whether you've got some more influence over their future. I would also say, once the restrictions are lifted and you can actually do face-to-face, then nothing beats having a face-to-face meeting with MPs. And again, it might be the case if you write and say, will you meet me about the Climate Change Act? They might well say no, or they would find some reason why they were so busy. So you might actually say, could you meet me about something completely different, like, I don't know, getting your bins emptied on time? Those are the sort of things that MPs quite like. So you could go along with that as your number one ask, and while you are there, make sure you ask them about the CEE Bill as well. But I think that maybe one of the most important things to do is to demonstrate that this isn't just you as one person asking this, to try to be active in whatever groups you are already active in your communities, whether that's school governors or whether it's the Women's Institute or whether it's, a rowing club, whatever it is, that sense that the person actually eyeballing their MP is someone who represents a group of interests, and therefore not just one voice, but many voices. I think that can make a difference too. I mean, it is true when it comes to the Conservatives in particular, who have yet to put their name on the line on the bill, that they will be worried about the economic impacts of it, because it challenges their economic ideology of thinking that it's possible to go on having infinite economic growth on a planet of finite resources. And, many of those Tory MPs won't actually give you the kind of answer that you want until they know it's safe to do so from their front bench. But that's not an argument to keep pressing them, because the more you press them and the more they know that their colleagues are being pressed on the same issue, then those voices will be being fed up back to the party whips and ultimately to the front bench and the Prime Minister. And so I guess I would just simply say the fact that you're continually getting letters back that seem to be fobbing you off or not being interested doesn't mean that they're not having an impact. They will, and they do, and they stack up. And eventually you don't know which letter it's going to be or which contact is going to be that actually switches things. But things do go in that way. And I noticed Charles Secret in the chat was remembering how, practically all private members' bills that have ever become law will have gone through the process we're describing now, where people do get a bit downhearted and think, well, if my MP isn't sympathetic, then do I need to go and do something else? And the answer is no, you need to do the same thing and more, and get more colleagues alongside you.
We are here today to highlight one of the most important bills that's to go before Parliament. Dear Cheryl Murray, the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill is a draft law which would mean that the UK would play a very important role in limiting the global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. Already 100 MPs are backing this bill. We would urge you to please join them in supporting this essential law. Please help us to secure the future for our children and their descendants, as well as all the fauna and flora of this beautiful planet. If we act now, there is hope. Thank you.
This is a message from my local MP, Cheryl Murray. I'd really like her to back the CEE Bill when it comes up for its reading in Parliament. I just want her to help us look after the planet.
Cheryl Murray, South East Cornwall MP, if you want to be remembered for anything great that you may do in your life, this is it. Back the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. It's the only method we will have to do the right thing to save the planet.
I just want to say, Cheryl Murray, please back the bill for the future of my children and yours and your grandchildren.
Hello, I'm here to ask Cheryl Murray, our MP for South East Cornwall, if she'll please be the first Conservative MP to back the CEE Bill. That means the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill.
That's like, as soon as you put something up,
Wow, that was a brilliant video there from South East Cornwall. And news just in, we are trending #1 in politics. So keep tweeting, keep it up, really good work. And so many pictures out there and so many videos. And just to say, if you've made a video and we haven't shown it, don't worry, it's not wasted work, because we're going to make a montage, and this is our first live stream, so we're just kind of learning how to do this stuff, so bear with us. But a big thank you to everybody out there. I mean, I don't know about you, Alex, but I've been really overwhelmed, like a bit like having a party, isn't it? You're like, will anybody turn up? Will anybody turn up? And then millions of people turn up. You're like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just been so many. Over to you, Alex.
Yeah, I think that obviously we knew there'd be something going on, and the last week or so I'm like, oh, okay, something big's gonna happen, which is great. And then I was talking to someone else in the campaign earlier. It's like obviously there's so much that people are doing anyway, and I think it's captured people's imagination, and it's just really good that I really feel like we're connecting up with all of these local organisations that have already done so much work over the last few years, and if we can work together on this, then it'll be a massive boost to the campaign. So
yeah, I agree. You know, because I work with a lot of the businesses who support the CEE bill. So I go to like lots of business conferences and things like that. So I kind of really got the feeling out there that people really do want to change, and people really recognise that you know, we're beyond the last chance saloon here. We really are. We've got to do it now. And I see businesses actually asking for more regulation. It's very difficult to just operate everything off nudge theory, you know, and nudge theory alone is not going to solve this. So I was they launched a new Centre for Innovation at Imperial College last week, and I was at the launch for that. And the director of Arup, the biggest engineering firm, certainly in the UK, possibly the world, was just saying we need more regulation, please. And certainly for commercial development, they need loads more regulation. There's just really interesting times. And my big excitement is if we can get everybody with all these ideas and all this hope that's bubbling up, if we can all flow in the same direction and use the CEE bill as a way to change our world, then that'll just be brilliant. That's what my hope is for it. So it's not prescriptive. It doesn't provide the solutions. What it provides is a framework to agree on those solutions as a nation. And that's what's so exciting about it. Director, do you think we could go to some more people with some banners? I feel like we haven't shown quite as many, and there's so many out there, and we're almost at a stage where we've done our time for the first thing. So yes, please could we show another banner video?
Dear Selene, please back the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. North Devon is a beautiful place full of beautiful people. Please listen to your constituents and not just follow the party line. Please put planet before profit. Please put people before party. Please give us some hope. Please back the CEE bill. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back to the live stream. We're still trending on Twitter. Keep tweeting. Now, if you're thinking, oh, I wish I'd joined in on the banner drop. Oh, I wish I had more time to go to the CEE bill. Don't worry about it. Don't beat yourself up. Just go and donate us some money. That'd be great. If you haven't got time, give us some money. Actually, the donations have been coming in like amazingly today. Thank you so much for everybody who's going to support us. But we are going to need quite a lot of money because the fossil fuel giants have a lot of money to spend on social media and we haven't got any. So can you send us some money and then we can sort them out, can't we, Alex? We can get them to know. So, Alex, talk about some more of the NGOs and the other people who are in the Alliance.
Oh, the other people in the Alliance. So we've got some obviously some big name NGOs. Like I mentioned, we've got Greenpeace and Oxfam. There's Co-op Bank and Triodos Bank have come on board. There are so many. As I was mentioning earlier, you can go to our website and you can see a full list there. And I think what's really important is as well as this alliance at the national level is also these local alliances, which we're really seeing coming out today. And actually, like I was saying, I hadn't quite realised the extent to which these are already kind of working on the campaign, and it's really good now that we're in better touch. And so going forward after today, what we're really wanting to do now from next week, we're going to jump off this action and we're going to have a map on our website of all of the different local groups around the UK. And so what you can do is either find your local group and get in touch and then work on the campaign together, or if there isn't one in your area and you're already in a campaign group, you can add yourselves and you can link to your website. And that way we really start to connect the dots much better and have a really coordinated campaign, get the information flowing and people working together, because that makes it more more strategic and we work better, but it also makes it way more fun as well the more you're working with other people.
For sure. And also what we've forgotten to mention, or I forgot to mention, is why this year is so very, very important. Because the UK is hosting not one, but two major international events. So in June, we've got the G7 in Cornwall. And that, you know, that is the 7 richest nations in the world meeting up to decide stuff. And then in November in Scotland, we're hosting COP26. So part of the reason that we're campaigning so hard this year is because we know the world's eyes are going to be on us. So as the UK, we have got to start leading, and we've got to show the way and show the willing. And it's no good going, well, what about them? What about them? We're just going to have to lead. And where we lead, other people will follow, for sure. Because climate change is here. I mean, have you seen that video of the house being swept away in a river in Australia? And do you know what? Those people who are getting flooded now in Australia are the very same people who had to protect their property from fires last year. I mean, this stuff is actually really happening now. So for those people who are still like, in fact, there was an article, wasn't there, in the Telegraph going, oh, is it climate change or is it just spots on the sun? No, it's climate change, and it's within our power to make a change and to stop it being so bad. And that's why we need the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, because it's up to us. You know, change is going to happen whether we like it or not. Change is coming, and change is now. I mean, we've all been at home from a pandemic that's related to climate change. So change is happening now. And we've just got to decide, are we going to be victims or are we going to be the authors of what that change is? Because
can I just jump in on the COP thing as well, Anna? That it's what the bill does is it really provides an opportunity actually for the government as well. This is a really important point to make to MPs, is because we are hosting COP, we're not just at the negotiating table, but people are looking to the UK government. There's a reputational risk here. And that's a real decent argument that we can use with, especially with Conservative MPs, that this bill sets out how we enshrine the Paris Agreement into UK law, which it currently isn't. You know, how we can really show like we are taking responsibility for our emissions, for our impact on nature around the world. You know, we're addressing the climate and nature emergencies in a joined up way, and we're ensuring that our citizens are working with government and Parliament to make sure that transition is fair for everybody, and that it doesn't impact on some people in a worse way than others. So really, that's a real point to make to MPs. Is this is not a hindrance to you. This is a help to you for you to look good to the world.
Absolutely. And there was a very interesting comment piece from Neil Parish, who's a Conservative MP, but also the chair of the Conservative Environmental Network. And he was saying that it's very difficult for Alok Sharma to lead the world at COP whilst we are simultaneously cutting our overseas aid budget. And he wrote a whole piece. He didn't pull any punches yesterday about that. This is serious stuff. We really do need to lead the world. So, Director, but do we have more videos, please, of people's banners out there? Because people have been so industrious, and there's so many of them have made so many great banners. Do we have more videos that we could play, please?
We're standing here at the Cobb in Portmaddock, which will be subject to sea rise and flooding through climate change, to ask for support for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. Grateful that Liz Saville-Roberts has supported this bill. She's co-sponsored it, but we would like politicians of every party to back this bill. Despite political allegiances, we need it for the future of our children and our children's children. Please back this bill.
The world is in a climate and ecological emergency. I'm speaking to you from West Devon, where we are at Wheel Betsy, which is part of our rich industrial heritage. Unfortunately, the Industrial Revolution also left us with this emergency. In West Devon, the effects on farming are massive. Last year, crops failed and crops were ruined. Please, we appeal to all MPs, including our own MP, Geoffrey Cox, to back the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill.
Welcome back to the CEE Bill live stream. I think we're still trending. Keep tweeting. Tweet at hashtag CEE Bill. Show us your pictures. Look at everybody else's. There are so many people out there. I'm a little bit worried that people might have sent us videos and we might not have time to show them for this. Just have forgiveness, okay, if we've missed your video. I'm really sorry, but don't worry. We're going to put them all into a big montage. So, Alex, one of the key things about the bill is that what has happened since the Climate Change Act is there's been quite a lot of creative accounting, hasn't there, on greenhouse gas emissions and how we count them. Want to just talk us through that a little bit, what's been going on?
Yeah, so in our the way we account for our emissions at the moment is purely based on what's known as territorial emissions, which is roughly about 50%, more give or take a few percent, of the emissions that we're actually responsible for. Because obviously, you know, my phone, my laptop that I'm using, most of these things we don't really produce here in the UK, and yet we consume them, and therefore are, you know, responsible for the emissions that are caused by as a result of them. Also, you know, when in importing those products to the UK, there's an impact that those supply chains have on nature as well, and we're not taking any responsibility for that either. Yeah. And so that's what the bill does. It corrects both of those things.
Yeah, but it kind of does it in a way that has to be done with the rest of the world, because at the moment every country just counts on what's on their territory, and what doesn't get accounted for at all, not even anywhere, is the carbon emissions from shipping and aviation. So they're just kind of left, and actually shipping accounts for 6% of the world's entire greenhouse gas things. And if you think the UK is 1%, think about that. So shipping is a really big part of it. And so what we want to do with the bill is make everybody count their consumption rather than what they produce. But it's only going to work if every country does it. So this is something that's really important to take to COP. Because then you will see, and actually it's really good with this argument where everybody goes, oh, yeah, but China aren't reducing their emissions. And, you know, they've got loads of emissions, but a lot of those emissions are made by making the things that we consume. So we have to think about that a lot, really, and think about what we're consuming and how we want to reduce it. So that's one of the reasons, and that's one of the key things that we're pushing with the bill, that we have to stop this creative accounting and just and count what really counts. And it was interesting, you know, at the moment, the UK government says we have reduced our emissions by 40% since 1990, which is absolutely true. This is completely accurate. They are not lying. But also, if you look at how much we have reduced our industrial production, it has a very similar curve. It doesn't count for all of those emissions because we have got rid of coal and we have done things, we have moved a bit of a way, but it does account for a lot of them. So like you say, Alex, we're still importing all that stuff and we need to think about that. So do we have some more banner drops? Do we have any left that we could play? Okay, and you're back. Now, I think we're nearly there on what we can show you on our live stream. Hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, sign up to the bill if you haven't signed up. And then if you have signed up, get 3 friends a week to sign up to the bill. We've got to have an R number of 3. I've become a bit obsessed with these R numbers in times of COVID, as everyone has. And I'm like, right, we've got to spread faster than a virus. This is how quick we need to do this stuff. Alex, any more thoughts before we go to our last video?
Maybe I could do a couple of plugs, just to let people know, if you don't know already, we have regular online drop-in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. We sometimes do evening ones as well. If you go to the website, I keep saying that, but if you go to the website, the events section, there's always an event for what we call our grassroots share, so this drop-in session, and you can RSVP there, ask a question in advance. It's a great way to meet other campaigners. People are sometimes a bit apprehensive about coming if they're not so, not sure what to expect or haven't been so involved so far. That you're exactly the kind of person we would like to come along, and people end those sessions with a real sense of momentum around the campaign. So do come along to that. As Anna said, sign up on the website if you haven't yet, and keep pestering your MPs.
Yeah, I mean, just keep writing to your MPs, keep mentioning it. I mean, daily, if you've got the time to do it daily. I think that the skill is, and I've seen various MPs say this, that unless you tell them, they don't know how many people are really, feel strongly about this. So actually, letters do count. And the other thing that's quite interesting, so don't forget, put your own postcode so that they know that you're one of their constituents, because they're obliged to answer you if they are. But also sometimes I think an actual physical bit of post can have quite a big impact. And I know that the Big Ask at the time, they did a massive postcard campaign. And should we get any money, maybe that's the kind of thing that we could do for the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill. So don't forget to sign up. Don't forget to recruit your friends. Don't forget to send us some money. And then we could do maybe a big postcard campaign, big social media campaign to get everybody behind it.
Anna, can I say one last?
Yeah.
One last thing, Anna. Just because something that comes up as well is people are obviously can be disheartened by a rejection from an MP. That's not the end of the road. Firstly, even if you get a kind of standard response from your MP, it's surprising the impact that you can have. You'll just rate every single letter, every communication counts, even if you feel like you're pestering. It raises it on their awareness level. It raises the profile of the campaign in Parliament. These kind of informal conversations with party colleagues. They'll be like, I heard from this constituent about this. Another thing to do with that is the more we can reach out to different kinds of organisations, so not just environmental organisations, but say more small C conservative organisations like the Women's Institute, who are starting to come on board some in some areas. The more we can reach out across society, the more that filters through to those kind of informal conversations. Hey, did you see that the Women's Institute are backing it? Okay. So don't be disheartened. And get in touch with any questions.
Oh, do you know what you just reminded me of, Alex? Yesterday on Women's Hour, Sheila Hancock, I don't know if anybody's seen it, it's been flying around social media. So she was just talking about her life. She's 88, okay? And she's like, oh, lockdown, I've got so many friends, they've learned a language or they've learned a new craft. She said, I haven't learned anything. She said, I've just been sitting here looking at 4 walls and I've just come to one conclusion, and that is that we need a revolution. And Emma Barnett nearly fell off her stool. She's like, what are you talking about? And she was genuine that we need a revolution. And you see, my big worry is, I think we do kind of need a revolution. It's very clear that life isn't working out well for lots of people. We're in the G7, so we're one of the 7 wealthiest nations in the world, and yet we've got all these queues at food banks. It's very clear that things aren't working. But with my ecological and climate change anxiety hat on, we haven't got time for a revolution, people. We've only got 8 years to sort this out. And within those 8 years, the first year is the most important, because otherwise it makes it harder and harder as you knock on. So there is no time for a revolution. We have to do it within the system we've got. but we have to use the system we've got to change the system we've got, because we haven't got time for total upset. So the CEE bill is a way of doing radical change, creating radical change, but within the system that we have, and engaging with the people of this country and getting everybody together to try and agree what those changes might be, because there is just no time. So I think we've got one last video to play from the banner drops today. There have been so many people who've dropped banners. I would like to say thank you to everybody who's dropped a banner, everybody who's done a tweet, everybody keep retweeting. Let's keep it and keep recruiting. I think we've got one more film. Was the Alan Scott Gray one available, please, Director?
My name is Alan Scott Gray. I live in Findhorn, Scotland, and my MP is Douglas Ross, who is not supporting the CEE bill. I'm recording this message hoping that he changes his perspective. The science is clear. We are in the midst of a climate and ecological crisis. And I believe that it's time to let the scientists, the climate scientists, inform how we can alleviate the worst effects of this crisis. It's time to start putting actions ahead of words. And this bill is a way of showing that you trust in science rather than party politics. This is about saving people's lives. This is about preventing mass displacement. This is about protecting food security. This is about protecting life on Earth.
Okay, so that's our last video that we're going to show on the live stream. We have had more videos than that in. We will be making a montage. Thank you for making all the videos. Thank you for tweeting. Thanks for making the banners. It's been amazing. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, no, ditto. Thank you so much. It's been really inspiring, and I'm looking forward to going back on Twitter now.
Yeah, and we're going to leave you with a video. Now, it is a 12-minute video, but I have to say it is worth every moment of your time. Caroline Lucas has been amazing on this campaign. I really have full respect for the woman. She works ever so hard. I see her going around speaking at so many events. Anyway, we did manage to get an adjournment debate for the CEE bill. And so she opened with a speech in Parliament on the 9th of February. And she puts it better than I ever could. This 12-minute speech about why we need the bill is brilliant. So we're going to leave you with that, something to think about. Don't forget to sign up, donate. Lovely to have you. Thanks for all your work. Off we go. That's us. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and apologies for the technical hitch. It's been almost 2 years since this House declared a climate and nature emergency. And it's been over 1 year since Parliament last debated the climate-nature crises as an interlinked issue. Yet the need not just for debate and declarations, but for ambitious action could not be more urgent. The world is now hotter than at any time in the last 12,000 years, and 16 of the 17 hottest years on record have taken place since 2000. Record fires have raged in the Amazon and the US. Ice caps in Greenland melt at a terrifying pace, and Storm Eta wreaked havoc and unimaginable tragedy in Central America. At the same time, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services has set out the grim facts on nature and biodiversity. 1 million species now threatened with extinction, many within decades, more than ever before in human history. Every warning light on the dashboard is flashing red. And with the UK due to host the Climate Summit, COP26 in November, and with the COP15 Biodiversity Summit also taking place this year, the responsibility to show honest and bold global leadership could not be greater. And that means acknowledging three things. First, that our domestic climate policy is inconsistent and incoherent. To take just one example, the government's failure to call in the recent decision to allow a new coal mine in Cumbria has prompted James Hansen, for 10 years NASA's most senior climate scientist, to warn that the Prime Minister risks humiliation by showing such contemptuous disregard of the future of young people and nature. The UK cannot lead a good COP from a position of weakness and inconsistency. And second, we're off course to meet both our fourth and fifth carbon budgets. Not only that, but those budgets are based on an 80% emission reduction by 2050, not net zero. And the latest annual progress report from the Climate Change Committee highlighted that the government has failed on 17 of its 21 progress indicators, and that just 2 out of 31 key policy milestones have been met. And thirdly, and most crucially for tonight's debate, the science on which the net zero by 2050 target, and thus the revised Climate Change Act, are based, has moved on. It's time to update the legislation. Let me explain why. The climate doesn't care about target dates. What matters is how much carbon is emitted into the atmosphere over the rest of this century. The IPCC has estimated that a global carbon budget, the total burnable carbon between 2018 and 2100, consistent with a 66% chance of 1.5 degrees warming, is just 420 billion tonnes of CO2. Now, it's currently being burned at approximately 40 billion tonnes a year. On current trends, that gives us until 2030 at the latest, before that global carbon budget is used up. After that point, we would have to rely on costly and uncertain negative emission technologies to avoid global heating of more than 1.5 degrees. Historically, the UK has been one of the world's biggest emitters. We started the modern fossil fuel age with the Industrial Revolution. We're disproportionately responsible for the cumulative emissions in the atmosphere. So if you factor that in alongside the need to allow space for poorer countries to develop, a fair carbon budget for the UK looks like around 2.5 billion tonnes of CO2 over that same period. If we calculate emissions on a consumption basis, that is, if we take responsibility for carbon burnt overseas in the service of UK consumption, we are burning through our fair carbon budget at more than 500 million tonnes a year. Madam Deputy Speaker, that gives us just 5 years before it's gone. That is the reality. That is the inconvenient truth. And that's why we urgently need to adopt the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, a private member's bill that I introduced into the House last year, which has the support so far of 98 MPs from 8 different parties. The 2008 Climate Act was undoubtedly pioneering in its time, and many other countries have taken inspiration from it. But it is now hopelessly out of date. An emergency means we need to act now in line with what the science demands. And the beauty of the Climate and Ecological Emergency Bill, or CEE Bill, is that it offers government, parliament and citizens a framework for the UK to play the fairest and most effective role it can to meet the crisis head on. A framework designed for coherence and integrity. The CEE Bill follows the science. It represents the last best chance for this House to tackle the climate and ecological crisis we all face together. It's been drafted with the help of expert scientists and has 3 primary goals: to ensure the UK meets targets designed to limit global heating to 1.5 degrees, the point we must not pass if we're to avoid catastrophe; to conserve and restore nature, ensuring that we protect this life-sustaining planet that is our common home; and to give people a real say in how we transition to a zero-carbon society, drawing on the creativity and the ingenuity of the British people as we recover from the effects of the pandemic. It also seeks to fill in the holes of the Climate Change Act in 3 key ways. First, by accounting for the UK's emissions on a consumption basis, counting the emissions we're responsible for overseas as well as the emissions from international aviation and shipping. Second, by setting out measures which tackle the climate and ecological emergencies simultaneously. And third, by involving citizens in what will need to be an equitable shift towards a fairer and greener society. Madam Deputy Speaker, we need to tell the truth about our climate emissions. The government likes to say that it's reduced emissions by over 40% since 1990, but that's only true on a territorial basis. And one of the ways it's been achieved is by offshoring so much of our manufacturing and essentially outsourcing so many of those emissions to countries like China. So if you factor those back in, we've reduced emissions by much less than 40%, and possibly by as little as 10 or 15%. It is time for honesty, time to face reality. The Climate Change Committee has now published its advice in relation to the 6th carbon budget for the year 2035, and specifically recommended that international aviation and shipping emissions be taken into account. I would welcome confirmation from the Minister tonight that the government intends to heed that advice. I'd also note that the CCC's advice still leaves out the emissions associated with trade. So I'd like to ask the Minister, will the UK commit to updating its consumption-based accounts and setting targets and budgets which take account of all the carbon emissions attributable to UK consumption, including those associated with imports? And does she agree that COP26 is the golden opportunity for the international community to start to coordinate action on consumption-based emissions with a view to ensuring consistent, robust methods of calculation, avoiding the risk of double counting, and to get the incentives right for different actors? Now, one of the most important policies in the CEE Bill is the inclusion of nature. Nature has been absent from these debates for far too long, and the UK is one of the most nature-depleted countries in the world, failing right now to meet 17 out of 20 UN biodiversity targets. Yet climate and nature are two faces of the same problem. The CEE Bill places a premium on nature-based solutions, making change now, rather than relying on speculative future technologies. And unless we change the goals of our economic system away from ever-increasing growth, as the Dasgupta review demonstrates, we will undermine both our own health and that of the natural world. As Professor Dasgupta says, we need to change how we think, act, and measure economic success to protect and enhance our prosperity and the natural world. And if anyone is in any doubt about that, consider that the global economy is set to nearly triple in size between now and 2050, which means 3 times more production and consumption. It is hard enough to decarbonize the current economy in such a short time span. The idea that we will be able to do it 3 times over whilst protecting and restoring nature is, frankly, for the birds. Or quite literally not. Not for the birds, not for the bees, not for the thousands of species at risk from the impact of human activity on the planet. The UN Biodiversity Summit, COP15, due to take place in May, is an immediate opportunity for the government to raise the bar and demonstrate that it is listening to Dasgupta and others. And then finally, citizens' engagement. It's important to recall that the 2008 Climate Change Act itself also started life as a presentation bill in 2005, inspired by civil society's Big Ask campaign. It's proof that by working together with shared purpose, giving a voice to thousands of concerned citizens calling for change, global history can be made. Likewise, the CEE Bill is the people's bill. It sprung from the grassroots with the intention of giving the public a real say on the climate and nature emergency. The brainchild of the CEE Bill Alliance, a talented group of campaigners, including those who previously fought for the Climate Change Act, it's also had input from scientists at the cutting edge of climate and ecology. And my thanks goes to them all and to all those who've joined the campaign. Because the campaign for the CEE Bill is broad and inclusive, working with allies from business, trade unions, faith groups, charities, local communities, the arts and individuals. And the bill has participative democracy at its heart. The transition to a zero carbon future isn't something that should be done to people. It's something which should be done with people. Only then will it be a just transition. And there's an opportunity too for the process to give citizens fresh agency and hope for our response to the climate crisis, to renew our tired and failing democracy. Initiatives such as the Climate Assembly UK shows there is huge appetite to be part of identifying and agreeing positive solutions. Assembly members came up with ambitious ideas like free bus travel, a frequent flyer levy, advertising bans on high emission products. You know, we're often told that the public won't get on board with bold policies, but that couldn't be further from the truth. And it's also striking that alongside clear, proactive, accountable and consistent leadership from the government, Assembly members also wanted cross-party consensus and for political parties to work together. The CEE Bill proposes a new and much larger emergency assembly to guide Parliament and government in its strategy to reduce emissions and restore nature, to help ministers, not hinder them, and ensure that action reflects the boldness for which citizens are crying out. So can the Minister outline tonight whether the government does have plans to actively and meaningfully engage the people of this country in tackling the climate and nature crises, and what role does she envisage would be played by participative democracy? To conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are nearing a cliff edge of cascading Earth system collapse. The narrow window for limiting warming to 1.5 degrees is closing fast. Leadership means telling the truth about what that means for people's lives and livelihoods. It is no exaggeration to say that this is the most consequential decade in human history. The experience of COVID-19 has demonstrated that with a collective understanding of the nature of a crisis, governments can take radical, unprecedented action. The scale and ramifications of the emergency requires us to set aside party differences, as happened in 2008, and reach for the new vision of human prosperity that we know is possible. With sufficient political will, we can cooperate to ensure that we all thrive within the limits of our planet. But it isn't going to happen without new legislation that gives us a framework commensurate with the science and with the reality. And the CEE Bill is that new legislation. It brings the future into the present and our responsibility to the future into the present too. So I hope the Minister will grasp this opportunity to recognise that the climate crisis is bigger than any one political ideology, and work with me and others on legislation which could be a new and desperately needed global first.